On the Hell's Gate side of the pressure door, Greta stood back and watched her engineers using their plasma torches to slice through the iron. Behind her, the Gallows Brigade stood at attention, weapons at the ready. Greta turned to face her soldiers and paced in front of them. She was in full plasteel battle armor from head to toe. Her helmet provided optical enhancements and voice amplification to deliver orders in combat situations.
I want a tight formation. First platoon will enter 3 abreast and lay down suppressing fire. Once on the other side, I want you to peel off to the right and left and make room for the next wave and maintain fire support.
She began walking through the ranks, raising her voice to be heard over the electric crackle of the plasma cutters.
Remember, we are here to complete a mission, but any aggressors are considered a target. Anyone who resists is considered a target. You are clear to use lethal force at any time. We do this by the numbers, people!
Greta turned back to the engineers and saw that they were nearly through, and the iron door made a loud, metallic groan as it started to buckle. The engineers scurried back as the door tore away from the hinges and fell forward, dropping onto the stone floor with a resounding clang. Greta quickly stepped in front of the opening and activated the optical infrared vision enhancements in her helmet. She could see several walls had been constructed out of stone and gravel. A small berm blocked the path 10 meters past the door. The path was narrow and went on as far as she could see. It was not ideal for her men. They were walking into an unfavorable position, but from her knowledge of military history, she knew it as another name. A murder hole. She saw the orange helmet of a miner as he poked his head up over the edge of the berm and spotted Greta in her advanced position. She stepped to the side and called out to the soldiers who were eagerly awaiting her orders.
First platoon! 3 by 3! Advance!
First platoon surged forward, 3 soldiers abreast. The sound of their boots echoed in Hell's Gate. The first trio reached the breached door and stepped through. A few miners jumped up from behind the berm and hurled stones at the soldiers. The rocks bounced off their armor with little effect. One of the soldiers turned back to Greta, as if he was asking her what he should do.
Warning shots!
The soldier turned back, and the 3 of them fired off a burst from their plasma rifles. Green tracer rounds flew up and over the miners' orange helmets. Then they turned and ran away from the berm.
Pitiful. Smoke!
3 more soldiers from 1st Platoon stepped into the threshold of the door, slammed smoke cartridges into their rifles, aimed, and fired.
Advance!
More soldiers marched through the opening, moving toward the berm. The soldiers tried to fan out as they passed through the door, but there, the defensive walls gave them very little room. The first 3 soldiers climbed up the berm. Ahead of them, they saw several more walls on either side, leaving one narrow corridor for them to pass through. There were no miners visible, and no sign of opposition at all, other than the rock throwers who had fled the scene. One of the soldiers signaled for the next wave to approach. 3 by 3, they filled up the corridor, crushed into the small space. As the last soldiers of 1st Platoon crossed over the threshold, a loud sound could be heard overhead. It was a metallic rumble that lasted a few seconds, then ended with a deep gong tone of metal on metal. The soldiers looked up, but couldn't see anything in the darkness. One by one, they started to turn on their headlamps, slowly illuminating a massive mechanical object on the ceiling of the tunnel, some 50 meters in the air. The machine started humming, as if it were powering on. The sound got louder and louder. Soldiers were getting restless, shifting their stances, looking up nervously and having no idea what the device was or what its purpose was. The soldiers in the middle of the line tried to move back, but there was no space. They were packed in with no room to maneuver. The noise from the machine grew in intensity, and the soldiers could see by the illumination of their headlamps a large nozzle being lowered from the machine. Without warning, a jet of hot steam shot out of the nozzle. The steam plume hit the center of the ranks, then mushroomed outward like a spreading fog. A few soldiers panicked and tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Shouts rose up from the platoon leaders trying to maintain order.
Fall back!
The steam continued to spew out of the nozzle. From her position at the threshold, Greta watched as First Platoon disappeared in the cloud of steam. She soon realized that the steam wasn't injuring her soldiers. Their armor was protecting them.
First Platoon! Advance to the first wall!
The first 3 soldiers marched down the berm's slope and exited the cloud of steam. As the air cleared in front of them, they saw hundreds of miners blocking their path. There were miners on top of the walls and behind the walls too. They were standing in complete silence, just staring at the soldiers, waiting for something.
Attack!
Miners surged forward, screaming as they ran. The training of the 3 Gallows Brigade soldiers kicked in, and they raised their plasma rifles, selecting targets. They fired in unison. Their aim was precise, and 3 miners went down. 3 more shots, 3 more down. But on the 3rd volley, all 3 rifles jammed. The soldiers quickly went through the protocols, but the rifles wouldn't fire. One of them pulled his sidearm and tried to fire, but it was also malfunctioning. The next line of soldiers appeared over the berm and tried to fire, only to discover their weapons were useless. The miners closed the distance and crashed into the soldiers. Hand-to-hand combat broke out in a wild melee. From his perch, Ace signaled an operator standing next to a water-drilling cannon on the opposite wall.
Now!
The operator pulled down a lever, and the machine propelled a blast of water at a high rate of speed. The water skimmed the berm and slammed into several soldiers on the slope, knocking them off their feet, sending them sprawling into the soldiers behind them. Carter joined Ace on the wall.
The firing relays will reset in a few minutes. They'll be able to use their rifles again.
Ace looked down and saw that First Platoon was in complete disarray. The soldiers in the rear were trying to push back through the threshold and retreat, but it was blocked by Second Platoon, who was trying to engage. The fight was raging at the top of the berm as the miners fought with desperate ferocity, swinging picks and shovels, using pry bars as pikes, holding their own with the Gallows Brigade.
Let's just do as much damage as we can until then.
Ace pulled his plasma pistol out of his holster and fired into the mass of soldiers. The battle at Hell's Gate was raging as miners and soldiers clashed on the berm, neither side being able to gain an advantage. From his position on the wall, Ace turned to a darkened area between 2 of the walls. He keyed his optics and flashed 3 quick bursts of light. Down in his hiding place between the walls, Gannon saw Ace's signal and silently motioned to a group of 50 men and women, all armed with hand tools. One of them carried a cutting torch. They followed Gannon along the wall, building speed as they went, breaking into a run.
Fight! Defend your home! Defend your brothers and sisters!
Gannon led the miners out into a full assault on the unsuspecting soldiers of 1st Platoon. The soldiers behind the berm were unprepared for this surprise attack, as Gannon led his miners into a flanking assault. Ace watched the battle from the wall. The soldiers' weapons were still useless. Steam still drifted down from the machine on the ceiling, not with the same volume and velocity as it had when it first powered on, but still it was enough to keep the plasma weapons damp and inoperable. The water cannon kept firing pulsing blasts at high pressure, forcing the soldiers to run for cover and making any sort of counterattack impossible. Ace had the sudden thought and then turned to Carter.
We're winning! We can beat them!
Ace felt something well up inside him. A feeling he had only felt once or twice in his life. The first time he had been able to find food for his mother. The moment right after he repaired Hazel and she imprinted on him. It was pride. Ace looked down and noticed that Gannon was watching him with a look of adoration and parental approval. Greta was paying close attention to the action just beyond the door. It was clear to her that 1st Platoon was taking on casualties and had lost any sort of tactical advantage. She quickly surveyed the scene on the walls and saw Ace up on top, pointing and shouting as he commanded the miners from above. She spied the water cannon that was firing relentlessly, pushing her soldiers back. Greta turned to a squad of soldiers in 2nd Platoon. There were 6 muscle-bound soldiers with big packs of ammunition strapped to their backs. A belt feeder was attached to their weapons that were clearly designed to inflict massive damage. The gun had 2 long barrels that fired tungsten projectiles propelled by a sonic particle implosion. The gun was called the S-44 Scorpio mini-cannon, and the effects of a direct hit were devastating.
Zulu squad! Heavy gunners, front and center!
6 heavy gunners moved forward through the ranks.
Make some room there!
The officers moved some of the soldiers back to make room for Zulu squad. The officer nodded and started pulling 1st Platoon soldiers out of the threshold to make room for the heavy gunners. Greta had to give some begrudging respect to Ace. Whether he had found out about the plasma rifle's flawed firing relay, or someone had told him, he had figured out a way to exploit that weakness and turned it into a strategic advantage. This bunker orphan was smarter than she had given him credit for. But now, as the heavy gunners got into position and raised the long barrels of their weapons, Greta was going to get the upper hand. Because Scorpio mini-cannons weren't affected by moisture.
Open fire!
The heavy gunners fired their weapons, unleashing hell. The first salvo obliterated the water cannon, tungsten projectiles cutting through metal as if it were paper. The operator barely dodged in time to avoid the devastation. Greta pointed up at the ceiling of the cavern. The heavy gunners adjusted their aim and fired again, and the steam machine was utterly destroyed. Metal and rock fragments rained down on 1st Platoon, but they were mostly protected by their armor. Ace watched in shock as the heavy gunners swung their cannons about, aiming at the miners on the berm.
Retreat! Fall back to Oxford Turn!
The miners clocked the heavy gunners just in time and retreated down the other side of the berm as a powerful volley shot up the ground behind them. Ace watched as the heavy gunners continued blasting away in a furious barrage. Gannon and the miners were pinned down, forced to take cover as debris rained down from the walls. Ace could see Carter at the far end of the wall, crouched down to avoid any stray rounds. He noticed that Carter was speaking to someone, even though there was no one near him. At first, Ace thought he might be praying to Amun, but then he zoomed in with his optics and saw Carter was talking into some kind of device strapped to his wrist. He hadn't noticed it before, as it was hidden underneath the sleeve of Carter's robe. The device wasn't a VCOM or any other kind of apparatus Ace had seen before. Who could he be talking to? Then, Ace noticed movement on the ground near the pressure door. Greta stepped through the opening, uttering new commands from an advanced position.
Assault troops! Engage grappling hooks! Man the walls!
A squad of 1st Platoon soldiers peeled off and approached the nearest defensive wall. They activated grappling hooks from their plasteel gauntlets and fired them up into the ceiling. A motor reeled the cable in, sending the troopers flying upward, and they landed on the wall, completely surprising Ace and the defenders.
Ace, look out!
Ace turned to see an assault trooper land in front of him and raise his plasma rifle. Carter was on him in a flash, bashing the soldier with a pickaxe, knocking him off the wall.
Thanks!
We've got to push them back!
Another soldier landed on the wall and rushed Carter. Ace raised his pistol and fired a plasma round into the soldier's chest armor, punching a hole in the plasteel. The blast knocked him off his feet and sent him sprawling over the edge. Ace looked down the length of their defensive position and saw even more troopers ascending. They kept coming and quickly overwhelmed the handful of miners manning the walls.
There's too many of them!
Ace!
Ace looked down and saw Gannon and his small squad of miners had been cut off.
Carter!
Carter looked over and quickly assessed the situation.
Go down and help him!
I'll hold them off up here for as long as I can.
Ace looked around and saw one of the grappling lines attached to the lip of the wall. Just as another trooper launched himself up at Ace, he jumped off the wall, grabbed the grappling line, and used it to rappel down to the floor. Ace landed near Gannon and started firing his plasma pistol, taking out soldiers and clearing a path.
Come on! We've got to pull back and regroup!
The miners ran past Ace, headed back to the village. Gannon stopped briefly and put a hand on Ace's shoulder.
That's a very brave thing you just did.
Before Ace could respond, he heard a plasma rifle being fired. The miner just behind Gannon was hit in the back with a round that sent her to the ground. Ace turned, shocked to see that the plasma rifles were coming back online. More shots were fired.
We have to pull back! Now!
Ace pulled Gannon along, turning occasionally to fire blindly into the ranks of the advancing troops. Ace looked up to the wall and saw Carter was fighting fiercely, but he was losing ground and running out of space. As his foot slid to the edge of the wall, Carter turned and looked down, spotting Ace in the fray.
Behind you!
They made eye contact for the briefest of moments. Then a soldier charged at Carter, and they both fell over the side of the wall, and Ace lost sight of him. Ace and the retreating miners were coming up on the last defensive wall as plasma rounds whizzed over their heads.
Keep going!
But then he looked ahead and saw more assault troops lowering themselves from the top of the last wall. Ace fired his pistol at the first one, but more were arriving, having used their grappling hooks to traverse all the walls and cut them off. Now, 24 soldiers were there. They raised their rifles and fired one volley. A few miners went down. Ace stopped running. The rest of the miners also stopped. They were trapped.
Cease fire!
The guns immediately went silent, but there were still pockets of hand-to-hand fighting.
Gallows Brigade, stand down!
The soldiers that were engaged in fighting pulled back and formed a wall around Gannon, Ace, and the remaining soldiers. They were completely surrounded. The battle was over. Soldiers parted as Greta moved forward through the ranks toward Gannon and Ace, who were standing protectively in front of the miners. Ace gripped his plasma pistol, but had lowered it to his side as he watched Greta approach. She stopped in front of them, staring at Ace for a good, long moment, but saying nothing. Ace was bloodied and bruised, but he was still standing. Greta turned to Gannon.
Tell them to drop their weapons and surrender immediately.
Ace hesitated, his finger moving to the trigger of his pistol. Greta took a step back and raised her voice so all the miners could hear.
By order of Dalton Locke, Regent Supervisor of Subterra, you will all be implanted with a biochip.
The entire complement of Gallows Brigade, all 3 platoons, had made their way into Oxford Turn. They had formed a circle around the village center, surrounding all of the miners. There were wounded among them begging for help. Gannon was kneeling next to a woman trying to provide aid, but there were no supplies and no way to stop the bleeding.
My people need help, Greta. We must tend to the wounded.
They will get aid after everyone has been chipped.
Greta, these people have so little freedom, and you want to take it away. A chip means our voice in Oxford Turn will never be heard. You know that. We'd rather be dead.
Ace felt helpless. He stepped toward Greta. Her personal guards stepped in front and raised their weapons at Ace. He stopped immediately and put his hands up. There has to be another way. Greta waved her guards off and took a step forward until she was standing very close to Ace. She spoke to him in a low voice, as if she wanted to have a private conversation, despite the hundreds of soldiers and miners nearby.
What do you suggest, Bunker Orphan? My aim is to preserve lives and complete my mission.
Gannon is right. The miners will resist, and will only end up in more death.
I have my orders. I'm prepared to see this through.
I know you are. But when you have nothing, when your life has no value, bowing down to those in control is no longer an option. These people, they don't fear death. They fear the loss of what little freedom they have.
All of this could have been avoided if you had just accepted your fate. We offered you the privileges of a citizen, and you refused.
I didn't refuse. I was taken out before you could chip me. But your offer was never really a choice for me to make. You would have chipped me whether I wanted it or not.
What are you saying?
It's all about choice. You didn't give these people a choice either. You just forced your will on them. And they fought back because you've never cared about them. About us. Before. So why should we trust you now?
We have you surrounded, Ace. You aren't in a position to negotiate.
Greta waved her arms to indicate her army encircling the village center. Ace looked past her at the corpses littering the battlefield between the walls. And we took out nearly a third of your all-powerful army. With an untrained, outnumbered force. We showed you how much we value our freedom. Greta stepped back, appraising Ace as if she was seeing him in a new light.
I agree with you. If circumstances were different, I'd have been proud to have you as one of my soldiers. The last thing I want is any more bloodshed. You can save the miners. You can save Gannon if you willingly accept the chip. You'll show them that they can trust us. What do you say?
Ace looked around at the miners, at Gannon, who was still tending to the wounded. He looked back at Greta and ranks of Gallows Brigade soldiers behind her. There didn't seem to be any way out of this. Maybe he was a fool, Ace thought. Maybe the concept of choice was only for the privileged few, not for bunker orphans and dwellers who lived in the depths. I'll accept the chip.
What did you say? Louder, so everyone can hear.
I agree to be chipped. And you should too. It's the only choice we have. A chorus of dissent rose up from the miners.
No! We don't trust them!
A few of them picked up their weapons, preparing for a fight. Ace turned back to the miners and held up his hand, begging for quiet. I will get chipped because I am making that choice for myself. Each of you is free to make that choice as well. I am doing this in the hope of bringing peace. But if you wish to resist, then I will fight alongside you with a chip in my arm. Greta waited until the clamor died down, then put 2 fingers to her mouth and whistled. Seconds later, a bot appeared padding through the line of soldiers. It was an A-Tech medbot. As it approached, a syringe extended from its shoulder plate armor.
Ace has agreed to be chipped. Let's get this over with.
As the A-Tech medbot got closer, Ace took a step back, but 2 Gallows Brigade soldiers grabbed his arms, holding him in place. Gannon got to his feet and moved in between Ace and the A-Tech.
You have no more authority here, Uncle. It's been revoked. Remove him!
More soldiers moved forward and pushed Gannon to the side. The A-Tech crawled closer to Ace. One of the soldiers pulled up Ace's sleeve, exposing his forearm. Ace got a look at the syringe and struggled harder, but the soldiers held him in place. The syringe extended out further and the A-Tech stopped in front of Ace. Greta leaned in, anticipating the moment, uttering her final command.
Do it now. Chip him!
As Ace watched the syringe extend towards his exposed forearm, time seemed to slow down. Maybe this was the answer, he thought. If he got chipped, he would be accepted as a citizen of Subterra. If the miners saw him getting chipped, then they would accept their fate too. Would their lives be better in the aftermath of this? Would they finally get the respect they wanted and deserved? He realized he didn't know the answer, but he couldn't shake the nagging thought that this was all part of some larger ploy by the Locks to exert more control. As the needle pierced the flesh of his arm and drew blood, he struggled even harder, trying to pull back, but he was hopelessly held fast by Greta's soldiers. Ace closed his eyes, powering down his optics as his body went limp. Willing or not willing, he was ready to accept his fate if it would help Gannon and the miners. Ace could feel the needle push into his arm. He stopped fighting and focused his mind, trying to drown out all sounds. Here he was, in a position he had been in many times in his young life. He was helpless, powerless, all alone. He waited for the biochip to be inserted. Suddenly, everything went dark. Ace was in a total sensory blackout when his entire body jolted and he fell to his knees. He heard loud noises all around him, shouting, screaming. Someone fired a plasma rifle. Ace quickly keyed on his optics. As soon as his goggles powered up, the first thing Ace saw was the ATEC medbot. It was a few feet in front of him, and something was attacking it. Another bot had jumped on its back and was now snapping down on the exposed wires in the neck. As the optics reached full power, you could now clearly see the attacker. It was Hazel. Ace couldn't speak. He was overcome. Tears of happiness poured out of his eyes. The ATEC didn't stand a chance. Hazel ripped the bot to pieces. Looking around, Ace saw a melee in progress. The miners were fighting back, and the soldiers were moving into a new formation, with Greta commanding and pointing at something in the distance. Ace got to his feet. The scene was surreal and seemed to be playing out in slow motion. When Ace finally saw what Greta was pointing at, he thought for a moment that he might be dreaming. 8 bots, all different sizes and models, were tethered together and charging through the ranks of the Gallows Brigade, mowing them down, running them over, and scattering their formation. The bots were pulling a minecart, and inside the minecart were 2 occupants. Ace had to zoom in with his optics to make sure that what he saw was real, and it took him a beat for him to actually believe it. Mal and Deke were riding in the cart. Mal was whistling commands, while Deke swung a heavy metal rod, clubbing any soldier that was unfortunate enough to be in his reach. Mal's eyes were fierce. Her hair was blowing in the wind. She surveyed the battlefield and maneuvered the bots for another attack run. She looked like a warrior as she turned to Gannon.
I'm gonna push them back! Get ready to fight!
Hazel barked at Ace, breaking him out of his trance. Ace looked at her, standing over the ruins of the ATEC. She barked again, and Ace knew it was a warning. 2 soldiers were running towards him. Ace picked up a rifle that had been dropped by a soldier and fired at them, hitting one and forcing the other to take cover. When Ace turned back to Hazel, she had already joined the fray and was creating chaos in the front lines of the soldiers, darting in and out, leaping, biting, clawing. Ace motioned to a small group of nearby miners and charged after Hazel.
Follow me!
Greta's personal guard had pulled her back to the berm, where she could survey the battle from a higher vantage point. Just like Ace, she couldn't quite grasp what she was seeing. Her daughter. Her teenage daughter, who Greta had come to know as a petulant, surly, immature girl who had shirked every obligation and responsibility Greta had forced on her, was single-handedly turning the odds of this fight. She watched as Mal steered the bots into the ranks and cut them in 2, separating a contingent of soldiers from the others. The miners swarmed the soldiers who were in disarray. For the briefest of moments, Greta felt a tinge of pride. Her daughter was a leader. Her courage was on full display, but the moment was fleeting. Greta had to act.
Zulu squad, to me!
The heavy gunners of Zulu Guard climbed the berm and formed a line in front of Greta.
Take out the bots, and only the bots! Do not fire at that minecart!
The heavy gunners raised their Scorpio mini-cannons and opened fire. The noise was deafening as the automatic weapons erupted. The lead bot, a Mass 5, was chewed up by a barrage of tungsten rounds. Mal whistled a new command, and the bot veered away. A round hit the minecart, but missed Deke and Mal.
Don't shoot at the girl!
But Greta's voice could barely be heard over the thunderous bombardment of the mini-cannons. Then, Greta saw bits of debris falling from the ceiling. At first, it was just a few small bits of gravel and rock, but then larger chunks rained down. Greta looked up and saw something clawing through the chamber, creating a hole that was getting bigger and bigger. A large rock fell down and knocked one of Greta's bodyguards to the ground.
Watch out!
Greta stepped back down the berm and watched in horror as something appeared in the hole above. It was a massive bot, and it was pushing through the hole. The Chigari brute fell down 40 meters and crushed 4 heavy gunners instantly. Before the remaining heavy gunners could react, Brutus was on them. The giant bot bit one of the heavy gunners in half, tearing through the plasteel armor with ease. Another heavy gunner aimed his weapon at the Brutus, but he was too slow and a paw slammed into his chest, sending him flying into the air. Within seconds, Zulu's squad was gone. Brutus turned his massive head and stared at Greta with red, glowing eyes.
Retreat! Retreat back to Hell's Gate!
Greta's bodyguards surrounded her and ushered her back toward the exit. The remaining soldiers broke off in a full retreat. The miners cheered as they watched the soldiers flee. Mal whistled a command, and the bots stopped running. The minecart came to a stop. Deke turned to Mal with a smile. Mal smiled back, but then she slumped over and fell to the floor of the minecart.
Mal.
You have to release the bots from the harness. Send them after the soldiers so they don't have a chance to regroup.
Save your strength.
Do it! Or all of this was for nothing.
Deke nodded and quickly unhitched the bots from the sled. He whistled a command, sending them after the retreating soldiers.
It's done.
Good.
Mal's eyes rolled back into her head, and she passed out.
Help! I need help over here!
Hazel joined Brutus up on the berm. Brutus had taken a few shots, but he was still fully operational. The bot lowered his head toward Hazel, and she nuzzled him for a moment. Then she barked at him, and they both charged after the soldiers to make sure that they couldn't mount a counterattack. Ace sprinted to the minecart just as Deke was pulling Mal out. She was completely limp in his arms.
Deke, you're alive!
We'll have time for a reunion later, my boy. She's hurt bad.
What happened? Was she shot?
She removed her chip. She lost a lot of blood.
Ace helped Deke lower Mal to the ground. He knelt down next to Mal.
Find Gannon. Tell him we need a doctor.
I'll be right back.
Ace positioned Mal's head into his lap and pushed her hair back from her face. Her eyes fluttered open and slowly came into focus.
Ace.
It's okay. You're fine. We're getting some help.
I'm sorry, Ace. It was my mother. She made me do it. The trial. I'm so sorry.
Mal was struggling to breathe, her chest heaving as she gasped for air.
I know. Just try to stay still.
I didn't know. You have to forgive me. I saw them. I saw them kill those children. They were just like you. Orphans.
Just hold on, please. Mal's eyes closed again as she slipped into unconsciousness. Ace tried to contain the panic that was building inside him. He looked around wildly.
Deke! Get it! Somebody help her!
Ace stood just outside a triage area that had been set up in the village center. There were dozens of wounded being treated, and it was chaotic. Medics shouted for supplies. One of the injured screamed as a tourniquet was applied to his severed leg. He had been hoping to see Hazel, but she hadn't returned yet. He knew in his heart that he would see her again. That bot was a survivor, just like him. Ace moved to one of the gurneys where a young woman was lying. She had a bandage over her head and right eye. Ace took her hand. Are you in pain?
I can't see. I can't see anything. It's all black.
We'll help you. Don't worry. I was blind once too, but I made a device that helps me see. I can build you one if you need to.
I know your voice. You're Ace.
The woman squeezed his hand. Try to rest. You fought bravely.
Ace!
Ace turned and saw Deke approaching him. He motioned for Ace to follow.
Come here. I'll take you to see Mal.
Ace followed Deke through the triage area until they reached an enclosed tent. Deke pulled back the flap to allow Ace inside.
I'll wait out here.
Ace reached out and hugged Deke tightly. So good to see you.
You too, Ace. Proud of you. Last time I saw you, you were just a boy. Now, you're a man. Look at you.
Ace nodded and entered the tent. Inside, Ace passed by a technician seated at a monitoring station. He was staring at a slate with medical readout information, but Ace had no idea what any of it meant. In the center of the tent, there was a med pod, a cylindrical chamber with tubes and cords that were connected to the monitoring station. Inside the med pod, Ace could see Mal through a sheet of rounded glass. A ventilator covered her mouth and nose. Her eyes were closed, but she was breathing. Tubes were connected to her arm, and a halo with wires and lights had been placed on her head. It looked kind of like a crown to Ace. Gannon was standing near the med pod, with a man Ace assumed was a doctor. They were speaking in hushed tones, and Ace couldn't make it out. When Gannon saw Ace, he motioned him over. How is she doing?
She's stable for now. We've repaired the artery in her arm, but she lost a lot of blood. And there were some internal injuries as well, and her lungs are partially filled with fluid.
Is she going to make it?
This is the best we can do for now. This med pod is pretty old and mostly spare parts, but it's keeping her alive. We just have to wait and see.
Can I stay with her?
I'll watch over her. I need you to get out there and circulate amongst the people. Talk to them. Just seeing you gives them hope.
No.
Ace, you were a hero to these people. You fought alongside them. You gave them hope that we can finally be free.
Come find me if she wakes up.
Of course I will, Ace. When she wakes up.
Ace exited the tent. He had hoped to find Deke there, but he had just left and was nowhere to be seen. Ace started walking through the triage area, stopping to chat with the injured and to listen to them. He eventually moved out of the triage area and into the village. Miners were busy clearing debris and hauling away dead soldiers. When they saw Ace, they would stop working and greet him. It was a strange feeling for Ace. They all knew his name. They smiled when they saw him. They treated him like a lifelong friend. Ace had never experienced this feeling before. He left the village and walked back toward the defensive walls and the berm. While the evidence of the battle was still there, It was mostly quiet now. He looked toward the pressure door, half hoping he would see Hazel, but there was nothing there. Ace looked around, flashing back to moments when he put his life on the line to fight against his oppressors. He thought about how Carter had saved his life during the battle, and flashed back to the moment he had fallen off the wall. Ace shook off the memory and kept walking. Miners were clearing the battlefield, picking up weapons that had been discarded. A group of them were on the wall, trying to clear the wreckage of the water cannon. Then, out of the corner of his eyes, Ace spotted someone moving very quickly toward the broken pressure door. They were wearing a long cloak, and a hood was just covering their face. Ace zoomed in with his optics and saw the person walking with a slight limp. It couldn't be, Ace thought to himself. I saw him fall. Carter? Carter? But the figure didn't stop. Maybe he was too far away to hear him. Or maybe he could hear him and didn't want to stop. Ace ran after him. As Ace moved deeper into Hell's Gate, he decided to keep his distance from the cloaked figure. If it was Carter, Ace wanted to know where he was going and what he was up to. With all the miners back in Oxford Turn, Hell's Gate was completely deserted. After passing through the broken pressure door, he had seen a few dead soldiers and one bot that had been destroyed in a firefight as the soldiers fled. But as he moved past the blast furnaces, lava vats, and giant ore processing machines, there was no sign of life other than the cloaked figure and Ace. Ace had stayed well back, using his optics to follow the figure's heat signature, giving him the best chance of remaining concealed. The cloaked figure seemed to have a destination in mind, though Ace had no idea what that destination could be. It was then that Ace realized he had no weapon of any kind. If there was any kind of confrontation with whoever this mysterious person was, he'd have to be careful. After a long passage underneath a system of catwalks, Ace almost lost the cloaked figure. He scanned the area, but heat from the lava vats was distorting his signal. He switched the frequency back to normal mode and looked again. He heard a soft metal clank and looked up. The cloaked figure was there, climbing up to the next level of the catwalk. Ace followed, careful not to make any noise as he climbed the metal stairs. He saw the figure slip into a room. There was a sign over the door, but Ace didn't know what it said. He stepped up to the door and peeked inside. The room was large and contained several machines on the far wall. Huge steam pipes extended out of the tops of the machines and ran up the wall all the way up to the ceiling. The subfloor was made of metal grates. Ace guessed that this was some sort of power generator. There was a bank of switches and dials on the wall to his left. That's where the cloaked figure was currently standing, with his back to Ace. The figure threw off his hood and started speaking into a device on his wrist. There was no doubt now who the cloaked figure was. It was Carter. Ace crept into the room carefully. He could see Carter talking, but couldn't hear what he was saying. Carter stopped talking and opened his robe. He pulled out a plasma pistol and set it on one of the monitoring stations. He also pulled out a small device, but Ace couldn't tell what it was. Carter then knelt down, opened up one of the panels, and looked inside. With Carter's attention focused elsewhere, Ace took a chance and moved towards him. He had to move slowly on the metal grates to avoid making any noise. He tried to stay in the shadows, but he was out in the open with no place to hide or take cover. If Carter turned around, he would easily spot Ace. Carter's back was still turned, and he had pushed his head deeper inside the electrical cabinet as he continued doing his unknown task. Ace slowed his movement, taking one step at a time, getting closer and closer to the pistol. He was nearly there. He stretched out his hand, taking one final step. The metal grate was uneven and made a sound when Ace stepped on it. Carter turned. Ace and Carter locked eyes. Carter lunged for the gun and aimed it at Ace.
Get back.
What are you doing here? Who are you talking to?
You have to get out of here.
No. I want answers. I thought you changed.
No, you're wrong, Ace. Oh, you're wrong, Ace. I have changed. I have been enlightened.
What are you doing here?
This is the primary power station for the bunker. The beating heart of Subterra.
And why are you here?
I'm a savior. Just like you, Ace.
Answer me! Ace took a step forward, but Carter brandished the pistol at Ace's chest. His smile disappeared.
I did tell you the truth. About how I made my way back into the bunker from the surface, how I met Gannon, and how he took me in. But I left a few details out. The best stories always do.
An alarm sounded from the instrument panels. Ace could see the warning lights and gauges going into the red. Carter took out his ARP and gas inhaler and took in a big breath.
We don't have much time. But you deserve to know everything. When you left me on the surface, I was dying. That is the truth. I prayed to Amun to rescue me. I begged him to save my life.
Amun?
Yes. He sent an angel down to me from the heavens, in the form of a beautiful, gleaming transport ship. My eyes were blinded by the dust as the craft touched down. My rescuers took pity on me. They carried me aboard and saved my life.
Ace suddenly had a flash memory of his time on the surface. He remembered the flying object he had seen in the sky. Tomas had assured him it must have been a hallucination, but now, hearing Carter's story, Ace wasn't so sure. Who were they? Where did they take you?
Amun answered my prayer. The ship took me into the sky beyond the clouds. Day turned to night. I don't know how long I was there, but Amun healed me. He breathed life into me. My new hosts were kind and generous. I was nursed back to health. They offered me the chance to live with them in the heavens, to live as a god. All they asked is that I complete this task. All they ask is that I complete this task.
You were in another bunker.
I was sent back to Subterra to open the surface door.
You're not making any sense.
Lure Gallows Brigade away from Eagle's Nest. Create unrest in the bunker. Sabotage the power generator. Open the outer pressure door for my hosts. And now that this task is nearly complete, I will be joining Amun and taking my place by his side.
Carter, you are still so lost. What did you put in there?
Override module. It will overcharge the output levels, flood the system with steam. The turbines will malfunction, and the generators will go offline permanently.
You don't have to do this. Turn it off. Make it stop.
It's already done, Ace. I couldn't stop it if I wanted to. And I don't. Amun and I have an agreement. I always honor my word.
Ace could see the furnaces which were glowing red as they overheated. There was a loud rumble, and the entire room shook violently. Ace turned to see a long crack appear on one of the pipes, and steam billowed out. You can't do this. Subterra will be without power. It will fall into chaos! Carter put the nozzle of ARP and gas into his mouth and inhaled deeply.
Like I told you, it's already done.
One of the furnace doors burst open, and a jet of hot flames spewed out. Ace realized it could not be stopped. Ace was frozen, having no idea what to do next.
Ace, you can't stay here. What I have set in motion will change this place forever. There will be a new order in Subterra, and it will not be kind to people like you. I can protect you. But you must leave with me.
No. I'm staying here. I'm staying with my friends.
We are the same. We are both survivors. We are both immortal. Saviors. Come with me. I'll take you to Amun. I'll take you to paradise!
A moon isn't real. Those people are using you.
Nobody cared about you here. You wanted out. You wanted freedom. And you can still have it.
Freedom isn't found outside the bunker. It's being treated like you belong somewhere. I found what I was looking for. I found a place where people see me for who I really am. Some place where I can make a difference. It's right here.
Carter stared at Ace for a moment, then seemed to deflate, all the energy leaving his body at once.
Fool. Stay here, then. Stay and die. I'm going to be with Amun. I will think of you so fondly after you are gone.
Carter turned and walked toward a secondary exit door near the instrument bank.
Come back. We have to try to fix this.
But Carter didn't stop. He ran through the door without looking back. Another rumble shook the room, staggering Ace, nearly knocking him to the ground. He turned and sprinted back to the main door. He made it to the catwalk and had descended the first set of stairs when the overload went critical, and a massive explosion rocked Hell's Gate. The primary power generator was gone. Back in Edendale, Dalton had been waiting restlessly for an update from Greta. He was pacing back and forth in the command center, staring at various slates showing surveillance footage throughout the bunker. Then, there was a low rumble and a slight tremor shook the room. Dalton turned to one of the technicians manning the monitoring station.
What was that?
Unknown, sir. Scanning all levels.
Then, another tremor hit, shaking the room so hard, Dalton had to grab onto one of the stations to avoid getting knocked off his feet. Alarms began blaring in the command center.
What the hell's happening?
Massive power disruption in Hell's Gate, sir. I'm trying to gather more data.
Damn it, tell me what's going on!
Sir, I have an incoming transmission from Commander Locke on a secure channel.
Put her through.
This is Commander Locke. Do you copy?
We copy, Commander. Report.
We have suffered casualties. We are retreating to sublevel 28. Regroup and counter. We're requesting reinforcements and medical assistance. We have many men down.
Commander, what is your position? Did you take Oxford Turn?
Repeat that. Repeat that. Region Supervisor signal is weak. We are losing you.
Commander? Greta? Can you hear me? What is your mission status? Greta!
But there was only static.
I've lost the signal, sir.
Get her back!
We're getting reports of power outages in all sectors.
Where?
Of all sectors. The Chute is dark, Winter Garden, transit systems. Everywhere.
The slates and lights flickered for a moment in the command center, and it went dark before the backup generators turned on, restoring limited power.
Backup generators online, sir. But I'm getting a fluctuation reading. We won't have power for much longer.
Dalton walked around the room thinking, trying to gather his thoughts.
What are your orders, sir?
Dalton didn't answer her. Instead, he muttered quietly to himself.
This isn't possible. Gannon can't do this to me.
Your orders, sir.
But Dalton remained silent, staring at the slates on the wall that were completely black. In Hell's Gate, all the lights were out and the machines were silent. The molten lava in the vats offered the only light, a soft orange glow that bounced off the cavern walls. Ace was able to make his way back to the broken pressure door with relative ease, but when he arrived at the entrance to Oxford Turn, there was no light at all, and he had to use his optics to follow the path. As he approached the village, he could see some headlamps bouncing back and forth, and a few battery-powered lights had been switched on, but it was still eerily dark. He passed quickly through the village center and into the triage area, heading directly for the medical tent. Inside the tent, it was just as Ace feared. The power to the med pod was out. The monitoring station was dark. Gannon and the doctor had opened the pod and were hovering over Mal. The doctor was operating a hand-pump ventilator. Ace stepped closer and keyed the light on his optics. Gannon turned to see Ace.
Ace, where were you? Do you know what happened?
It was Carter. He blew the power generator.
He's alive? Why would he do that?
I don't know. He wasn't making a lot of sense.
Ace stepped toward the med pod, staring down at Mal.
Mal, is she...
She's not breathing. She's not breathing on her own. And we don't have a power source for the med pod.
There's got to be something we can do. Can we take her to Winter Garden?
If the power generator is out, then there won't be any way to use the transit system. The elevators won't work. It would take days to get there. She won't make it in her condition.
Ace heard a commotion outside the tent. He threw open the flap and scanned the outside with his optics. Ace ran to the edge of the village and saw a group of miners gathered near the berm. Through the smoke, he could see something approaching. The big Chigari brute lumbered through the haze. The other bots appeared behind him, slowly padding toward the village. Ace took off running, moving through the gathered miners, looking for Hazel. But as he neared the berm, he could see she wasn't there. He kept running past the brute and the others, climbing up the berm. He made an adjustment to his optics to look through the haze. Nothing there. He could see all the way to Hell's Gate, and there was nothing. Hazel wasn't with them. His heart sank. Had she sacrificed herself to save him? It wouldn't have been the first time. Just as Ace was about to turn back, he heard something. A faint noise coming from beyond the door. He could see something moving through the smoke, running towards the berm. Then he heard barking. Ace didn't have to see the bot clearly to know that it was Hazel. She was sprinting towards him.
Hazel!
Ace ran towards Hazel, and when they met, she jumped into his arms, nearly knocking him over. Her tail was wagging as she barked, rubbing her nuzzle into his chest. He lowered Hazel to the ground and knelt next to her, petting her.
Oh, good girl. I knew you'd make it.
Ace hugged her tightly in his arms as she relaxed, giving in to the comfort of his embrace. Then, Ace pulled his head back from her, staring into her eyes.
Come on, girl. Mal's in trouble.
Ace ran back towards Oxford Turn, with Hazel keeping pace beside him. They arrived at the medical tent and entered. Ace moved to the edge of the med pod, reached down and took Mal's hand. Her eyes were still closed. Gannon had started chest compressions. The doctor put his finger on Mal's carotid artery.
Her pulse is getting weaker.
I'm here, Mal. You're gonna be okay. You're a survivor, just like me.
Hazel moved next to Ace, pressed her body gently against his leg, letting him know she was there and would always be. Ace watched as the doctor worked the ventilator, and Gannon continued with chest compressions. Miles above Hell's Gate and Oxford Turn, the outer blast door to Subterra rumbled open for the second time in recent history. When the door was fully raised, Carter stepped out onto the surface. He paused to put on a respirator, then looked up at the sky. Orange dust clouds swirled overhead, obscuring the sun. The harsh wind stung his eyes, but Carter kept looking up, searching for something. The only sound Carter could hear was the howling of wind slicing through the rocks of the canyon.
Amun! I have fulfilled my oath to you!
Carter took a few steps forward, then dropped to his knees.
Amun! Hear me! I have done as you asked.
The dust clouds seemed to grow heavier, and it grew darker as they blotted out the sun. Then, Carter heard something over the wind. It was a high-pitched humming noise just beyond the haze. It was getting closer. Something large and metallic broke through the clouds and descended slowly. It was the same craft Ace had seen when he was on the surface. Only this time, there were more of them. Dozens of ships broke through the cloud barrier. There were sleek fighters bristling with weapons. Warships. Carter's lips spread into a wide smile. His eyes filled with pure joy. He opened his mouth, but was so overwhelmed he couldn't speak. The first ship touched down, followed by the rest, landing in neat rows in front of Carter. The doors to the ships lowered, and ramps were automatically extended. Carter strained his eyes once again, fighting to see through the dust and the wind. Soldiers exited the crafts in a tight formation. They were fully armored and carried weapons. They marched toward the blast door, 1,000 warriors ready for battle.
Oh, welcome, my friends. Praise our moon.
Carter lowered his head obediently as they passed by him and entered Subterra.
Subterra, written and produced by Steve Kruger and Warren Davis. Narrated by Marty Yu. Performed by Cece Boyce, Jenette Goldstein, Kyle Borneheimer, John Sylvain, Doug Perkins, Hugh Fink, Matt Williams, Steve Kruger, and Marty Yu.